All right, folks, we got to talk about it. I was really hyper-focused on the spring game and getting out my preview and doing all sorts of content related to the 11-on-11 on-the-field action inside Autzen Stadium this weekend that there was big news that I wasn't able to cover. But now I'm able to cover it. And it's the decommitment of Kodi Greene and flipping up to the Washington Huskies up north. Okay, so there's been a good amount of decommitments over the last month or 2 months or so. Within Ducks recruiting. And I think there's been some jabs, right? There's been Bot Malatalo decommitting, flipping over to play offensive line, eventually committing to the in-state school in BYU. You have Jonas Williams. I think that was a little bit of a jab. Great quarterback, but a little bit of a jab considering that Jared Curtis is out there and that Ryder Lyons is out there. And there's certainly other options out there for the Ducks at quarterback. I think this Kodi Greene decommitment and flip is in the same type of category and ballpark as Tomahini Tupoi. It might even be more so, to be honest with you, which I'll get to here in just a minute. I think, and maybe more so, it stings, it hurts, it's a little bit of a gut punch, dare I say maybe a body blow. Maybe not quite a body blow, but it hurts. It hurts because of, I think, where Washington sits on the recruiting spectrum. Right, USC, it makes sense. USC down in Los Angeles, great historical program. They got a general manager and an NIL that's really being kicked into gear. That makes sense. When USC is operating at that level, they are certainly a threat to Oregon out there on the West Coast. But Washington is maybe not at that level. We know, at least publicly, why Kodi Greene flipped over there because of his brother playing over there. He's from the Seattle area. He's playing high school football down at that elite school at Mater Dei. So that's publicly certainly what is out there. I think there's some other things that aren't maybe as public that really played into this recruitment and this flip certainly as well. I think another reason it stings, this is a priority position. Oregon is starting to step up their recruiting game a little bit better than it was on the offensive line. Kodi Greene was a big part of that. Like, you felt good with the position that you were in on the offensive line. Okay, we got Kodi Greene committed, and then if we can land one of Iheanacho and Cantwell over there at left tackle, okay, that's a very realistic possibility. But now you lose Kodi Greene out of this class. And this is a class that I feel Oregon and their staff want to sign 2 elite offensive tackles. Now I think it puts a little bit more pressure back on this staff to be able to do that. Because you got Cantwell sitting out there. He was recently RPM predicted by Steve Wiltfong over to Georgia. It sounded like the visit this past weekend might have swayed things back towards the Ducks. But we'll see certainly how that ends up. That commitment is coming up on May 13th. Emmanuel Iheanacho has flipped around. Oregon has been his leader twice. Maryland has been his leader at one point in time. So we don't know where that one's going to end up. I think that Oregon's going to be able to close the deal on Iheanacho, but I don't know for sure. You got Calvin Obot that's sitting out there as well. Oregon fans might not be as familiar with him as they are with Cantwell, Iheanacho, or the now committed Greene, but he's certainly in that upper echelon of a very strong offensive tackle class across the United States of America right now. So I think there's maybe a little bit more added emphasis now to be able to turn up the heat, to be able to land 1 or hopefully 2 of these great offensive tackle prospects right now. We know the timeline that Oregon operates in. We know it's summer, into the season, closing the deal like nobody else can in December. We know that's the plan. Like, spring is not the plan, okay? But I think there's some other schools on the West Coast. We know Washington and especially USC. They see the way Oregon is operating, and they're trying to get ahead of the game, certainly right now. And I think that's a big part as to why they're attacking so hard, so early in this recruiting cycle at this point in season. They want to be able to flip the minds of some of these recruits, throw a lot of money on the table to shut down these recruitments and seal the deal over Oregon right now. I was listening to a recent press conference of Nebraska head coach Matt Rule. He had a very good comment in recruiting because, the Iowa State is going in there and they're taking a bunch of local Nebraska high school kids right now. He compared the Big 10 to the Big 12. That's maybe not as important right now, but I wanted to set it up to make this point. He said, quote, "Desperate buyers set the market." Desperate buyers set the market. That's just something to keep in mind right now. How Washington and USC are attempting to maybe get ahead, and maybe like this specific class, Washington coming off of a six-win season, they really want to try to ensure their future out there in Seattle. There's a lot more pressure on USC considering how those last couple of seasons have ended up under Lincoln Riley, where there's a lot of pressure, dare I say desperate in some cases, to really get ahead of the game. Where Oregon has maybe been like Nebraska in state, right? Where we made that comparison where maybe Oregon has been the team on the West Coast that has kind of set the pace and been the leader. Some of these teams are trying to jump the line and close down these key big recruitments before Oregon can possibly get back into the game as well. We know May is the start of the spicy season right now. Momentum is a very interesting buzzword that's being thrown around right now. Maybe Oregon has a little bit of a lack of momentum. Other teams have more momentum, but it's certainly something that a lot of fans are talking about. I want to bring in Travis Rooke-Ley from Ducks Rising to talk all about this, certainly right now. Momentum, it's a buzzword. It's a buzzword out there, Travis. It's been talked about, with maybe some other programs out there that are getting some more commitments right now. Maybe Oregon, the last commitment they got, Xavier Larice, seems like a while ago, right? What is your kind of take on this whole momentum conversation, or maybe lack thereof, within the Oregon fan base right now? Do you think that that there is any factor, or is that because when I think of momentum, I think it's kind of a narrative. It can be kind of fabricated a little bit to kind of fit within what someone really wants it to fit into. How do you kind of view Oregon and the conversation with momentum right now?
Yep. Thanks for having me on, Ted.
Yep.
I think that we have to remember that momentum ultimately is like a Twitter message board term. I know in conversations with the staff, like momentum is the last thing they think about, talk about, want to create. Like they're there to make the decision that's financially, roster-wise, process-wise going to be the best in terms of actually signing recruits. So this has become somewhat commonplace for Duck fans, the spring lull, if you will. And I think fans just have to remember back to last December, the previous December, what that felt like when it comes to the spring. I think this spring is very much setting up to be a time for Oregon fans where you're laying the groundwork for that summer fall push. And I think you can do that when you're banking on the success on the field that Oregon knows they're going to have. Contrast that with some other schools. I think that if you're not dead set on your roster come the fall, or there's some growing pains that maybe you're going to have, locking in your class makes sense. I totally understand that. But for Oregon, when you're recruiting with some of these big fish out there, you've got people lining up commitment dates come the summer and the fall. It makes sense from an Oregon standpoint to make your big push July and then bank on a big season. And if you need to get back into the game with some guys when you're sitting in the top 5 come November, I have no doubt we can do that.
Yeah, Oregon has been, and you kind of raised some really good points there. This is kind of par for the course. I don't think anything is too different, right? In terms of maybe there's a few more stars attached to maybe some of the decommitments that we've seen, certainly as of right now. But I don't think anything's too different. We've seen once the weather really starts to warm up, once it starts to get in the summer, and then you kind of mentioned Dan's the ultimate closer, of course. We can talk about commitments until we're green and yellow or whatever color in the face. It matters what happens, who signs on the dotted line, of course, in December. And the staff, we have no reason to doubt them. Of course, you're kind of dealing with them, and you kind of know what that's all about. So let's kind of move on to this next thing. We know 2 big commitments are coming up. May 5th is a commitment date for Jared Curtis. May 13th, it's been pushed back for Jackson Cantwell. Do you think that Oregon needs one of these commitments to really go their way over the next month? Or how do you kind of feel about these as to maybe where Oregon and the path they're kind of laying for the future here as the summer approaches?
Yeah, when it comes to Curtis specifically, obviously, I think the one piece that I would feel a little differently about waiting is quarterback.
Yeah.
Having a quarterback locked in early does make a big difference. I think that's the one thing that can help when you're working towards building a class. So obviously having had Jonas Williams committed was nice early on, and having your quarterback of the future, obviously we've talked ad nauseum about that and why that happened. But I do think that if you're making the argument of we need a guy now, we need to get the ball rolling, I think Curtis is definitely that guy. When it comes to Cantwell, you've got you've got basically 4 tackle targets on the board.
Uh-huh.
Cantwell, Nacho, Green, and Obot, who I think is a really underrated guy, and I
Yep.
know the staff feels very highly and thinks very highly of him. So Cantwell is interesting. I felt at times it was going to be Georgia. I felt at times it was going to be us. I felt 2 weeks ago that it was for sure Miami, and I had almost lost hope. I think this weekend definitely went a long way when it comes to that. But these things are just so fluid nowadays. One day I have a good feeling, the next day I have a bad feeling. Then we're back on board, then we're not. So I don't think anyone who thinks they know where Cantwell or Curtis is going to land as of today, I just don't think is correct. I think that we'll have our best feel probably 48 hours out on both guys.
Yeah, it's you mentioned fluidity, especially with Jackson Cantwell. That one has kind of gone all over the place. Even a guy like Emmanuel Iheanacho, he's had Oregon as his leader twice. Oregon to Maryland, and then certainly back to Oregon. So there's certainly a lot kind of going on in terms of fluidity. Let's talk about it. The decommitment of Kodi Greene. There's been some decommitments in this class that, have you kind of understand why they went the way they did. We talk about Jonas Williams, certainly before. Batmalatalo just going to the other side of the football as well. Kodi Greene, of course, is from the Seattle area. I think his brother plays on that Huskies football team right now. There's been some other decommitments that felt like jabs. This one felt like it hurt. It stung a little bit. Really, what was kind of your overall takeaway on this specific flip from Oregon over to Washington for Kodi Greene?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, anytime you're losing a big time guy like that to Washington, which hasn't happened in a while,
Yeah.
that definitely hurts. And it's why Greene was one of my priority guys, just because of the competition we were up against. Anytime you can keep a guy like that from the Washingtons and USCs versus maybe losing a guy like Iheanacho to a school outside the conference, I think that that's a little bit different. From what I can gather, I know let's just say his group didn't love the fact that we were recruiting 2 other big time tackles. That's just the reality of the situation. I think there are some parallels there between Jonas Williams and Kodi Greene. That's not to say neither are going to be good players. I certainly wish we had both in the fold. But I do think it kind of relates to the conversation we had earlier also about spring momentum, allocation of resources, how we're going to go about that. I think it totally makes sense from a Washington perspective to do what they needed to do to land him.
Yeah.
100%. From our perspective, I think given who else is on the board and when we want to make our push and how things are lining up, I don't think it made sense for us to, fight against those wins necessarily at that time. So I've maintained all along, I think that we'll sign 2 of those 4 tackles. I have no reason to change that today. I know that's been the staff's goal from the start. If I start to feel differently and we don't, I think it's cause for concern. We haven't recruited amazingly on the offensive line prior to last season. And it was super important the way this class and kind of geography shaped up. So I'm inclined to trust the staff. They've given us no reason to feel otherwise. As long as we have 2 on the board come December, we're good. But anytime you lose a recruit like that to Washington, I don't, I get where Duck fans are coming from.
Yeah, it stings because I think the difference with that is, Washington's kind of we know where USC is going. They hired a really good general manager, and we know certainly the history of USC. That's not a program that's going to kind of be winning 6 or 7 games forever, right? Certainly. But, Washington, I think, is in a different boat, and I think that's maybe why fans certainly felt a little bit different. All right, last thing, Travis, before we get you out of here, you guys were on location there at the spring game, having a great time over there. What were kind of some of your big 3 maybe quick takeaways, maybe from just the atmosphere and the environment that you were a part of, and then maybe the game itself?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, atmosphere-wise, just Autzen is special. It's special to be inside Autzen. Fans showed out, whether sun was shining, even though we didn't think it was going to.
Yeah.
I mean, that piece is huge, and I know the staff really, really leaned into that and leveraged that. Yeah. I know it was a little smaller recruiting weekend than some fans had expected, but I think it was strategic in that way. So I think that when we get to December, I think you'll see a bunch of names on that signing list that were there this weekend, and I don't think that's any coincidence. On the field, I mean, length and speed and talent at defensive back. I haven't watched the replay yet, but just watching those guys move and some of those young guys play, I think that's something we've lacked in years past. That was cool to see. And then I think some of the development off the edge. I mean, we haven't had a true speed guy in a few years, probably since KT was here. And so watching Blake Purchase and some of those other guys opposite Mateo, I think has the potential to really somehow have 3 NFL defensive linemen go and yet have that unit, at or above that level from last year.
All right, good luck. I'll say this. I loved Naeem Offord, Trey McNutt, both made plays. Good luck keeping them off the field as well. What you guys, quickly before you go, what's going down at Ducks Rising these days?
Yeah. Just grateful for all the new memberships. Love the ability to meet a bunch of people coming out Saturday. But for those of you that don't know a whole ton right now, like we're offering a really unique membership model. Obviously, your dollars going directly to things we're talking about right now. Dan trying to sign some of the best players in the country, and they can't do that without your support. So beyond the money, helping the program you love, we're offering a membership model that we feel like benefits fans, live interviews with players, connection to the program, the best intel in terms of, who's looking good in practice, who's not, where are we setting up with recruits on the trail, et cetera. So really encourage fans to just give us a try at ducksrising.com, and grateful for you, Ted, and grateful to be on.
Travis Rooke-Ley, the first two-time guest in TSOW. Thanks for coming on today.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Ted.